And Alabama picked up a recruit yesterday, Danny Lewis. You guys remember Danny Lewis, right? The guy dancing?
Yeah, with Brian Kelly.
With Brian Kelly. In our video from earlier in the week, he danced with Brian Kelly, but saved the last dance for Nick Saban, and those are your headlines.
Yeah, that was tailor-made
It
for your
got 9
cheesy
million
headlines.
views.
It did. Well, that's where it's viewed now, Tuscaloosa. Brandon Marcello is with us, 24/7 Sports. He's on the Johnston RV Center hotline at @BMarcello on Twitter. What is up, Brandon? How are you?
What's up? I guess that's what you get, if a coach grinds on you.
It was a rough look.
Who wants to go to school where the coach grinds on you?
Yeah, it was a bad look. I don't know.
Hey, so many directions we can go here. Let me start with Jim Harbaugh. So he tells Michigan he's going to return after having this interview with the Minnesota Vikings. There was rumors that maybe Stephen Ross and the Miami Dolphins last week. Do you think this was more of an attention grab for Jim Harbaugh, or do you think he was truly interested in getting back to the NFL?
Oh, yeah, he really wanted to get back in the NFL. So talking to people close to him, he was very interested. He's very interested in the Raiders. He was very interested in the Vikings. He had a connection there in the Vikings ownership, the front office, and he went in there thinking that he had a very good shot at getting the job, and didn't quite align with what the Vikings other administrators in the organization there were kind of looking for yesterday. And so Harbaugh left that second interview realizing he wasn't going to get the job, and quickly told Michigan, hey, I'm going to stay. I want to stay here. So I think if the Vikings offered him that job, he would have taken it, and we'd be having a much different conversation today. I think he was ready to go on his way out. But say this about Harbaugh. He's a different guy. He's quirky. He's weird, makes weird decisions sometimes, and goes about things strangely. And if I was Harbaugh, I'd be sitting there in contract negotiations with my agent telling Michigan, listen, I want longevity here. So give me whatever contract, 10-year contract. I don't want $10 million a year, but, I want to be set up so the first 3 years of this new contract, or 4 years, you can't get out of it pretty much. You'd have to pay me $50 million in an early buyout, because otherwise, I said this on my own YouTube channel, he loses to Ohio State the next 2 years, they're going to fire him. I mean, he's going to get fired the next 2 years if he loses to Ohio State. You guys don't think that? I mean,
right. He's
going into his 8th year, he loses 2 more times, he'll get fired. You can't lose 9 of 10 or whatever to Ohio State. So get you a big buyout, get some longevity there. That's how I would use this.
Jimbo Fisher, Brandon, in no particular order, greatest days in Jimbo Fisher's life. The last minute 49 in January of 2014 to win the 2013 national championship. The birth of his kids, getting those cute maroon boots when he signed that big contract in College Station. And it should have been yesterday, signing the greatest recruiting class of all time. Why is Jimbo worried what anybody thinks? Why is he so insulted? He should have been happy yesterday, in my opinion.
Yeah, that was very strange. I mean, it's like being the richest guy alive and then going up there complaining about other people making money. It was so weird. I didn't understand it. Obviously, that's not all he talked about at his press conference, but that he was saying that on shows he was on yesterday, and then of course during his press conference. So it was it was under his skin. And listen, all these coaches, they're dealing with the same thing. So let's not act like. I mean, listen, yes, his coaches work hard, but NIL has changed the game. It did help Texas A&M. It helped Alabama. It's helping Georgia. It's helping everybody who's able to use it properly. And it's all above board and legal. And schools can be involved now. I think what's interesting, I think what's really peeved off this coaches, to be honest, is that now they've realized here recently that coaches can be involved, or not coaches, but schools can be directly involved in setting up NIL deals now in the states where there's not NIL law. So, like, for example, the state of Ohio, they can be directly involved now at Ohio State. The school can help set that up because there's no law really against it. And so these other states, including Florida, are trying to retract their own law so that they can have that recruiting advantage as well. And I also think that coaches see that and they go, oh, wow, more to put on my plate, more to deal with, more drama. And so it gets under their skin and they start ranting and raving and kind of what you saw yesterday. And I will say this, we're getting into this. No, not I want to say we're getting into it. We're in this era now where, like Lane Kiffin especially, I like him. He's good for the game of football because he just says whatever he feels. But hey, Lane, like start reading actual news organizations instead of just whatever you see on Twitter and social media about stuff and message boards and thinking it's real. Like the whole thing about Texas A&M having a $30 million kind of like slush fund in NIL. I mean, it's just not true. They don't have that much money in an NIL slush fund that's going around out there. But because someone said it on a message board and it starts spreading on Twitter, Lane Kiffin, who gets on there and only retweets these aggregation sites, I've noticed, never actually reads real news organizations, it appears, starts believing it and spouting it off. And maybe he doesn't believe it, but just sharing it and spouting it off doesn't help anything. You're just, pouring gasoline on a fire that shouldn't even be burning in the first place by sharing false information. But hey, that's the day and age we're in now. We just share whatever we want to believe and it becomes truth, right?
That's right. It's Bro Bible, a guy named Slice Bread.
And that's not even true.
And that's not even true.
No, because Bro Bible has tweeted us today because we've talked about it. And I think Jimbo sliced, I cannot even believe I'm saying these words, but sliced bread was the originator. Bro Bible just, they weren't necessarily reporting it. So.
Again, we don't know who sliced bread is.
Yeah.
But still, Bro Bible's its own thing. And
So weird.
listen, I understand why everything, the way things are and why they exist. But man, let's not give loud horns to people who have no idea what they're saying just because it's interesting and it'll get clicks and everything. And I don't know. We got to be smarter about all this. We know what's fake and what's not just by if things don't pass the sniff test. But the problem is that one person hears it, and if they believe it enough, and then they start. It's like taking a copy of a copy of a copy. Back on the old days, you take a copier. It's just like you can't remember where the original source was, so then it becomes just truth and everything. So it is what it is. We just got to be smarter.
Brandon Marcello is with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline, 24/7 Sports. Go subscribe to his YouTube channel. Watch him on 24/7 Sports. Read him there and follow him on Twitter at @BMarcello. You wrote earlier this week about Auburn's situation. They don't sign anybody yesterday. They don't even do a signing day press conference,
Wow.
which is unprecedented, really. They lose another player, a receiver, and Javaris Johnson to the transfer portal. They've lost all their coordinators. And a lot of Auburn fans now are saying that this is not great. This program's not in great shape right now, Brandon. Just a 30,000-foot view. What do you see of Auburn football?
I mean, it's bad. It is. And I said this before. It's almost becoming not personal for me, but like I got friends still in Auburn after living there for 8 years, and I'm hurting for them because they're seeing this all kind of crumble around them, and they're powerless. And the other thing is you're seeing these players leave, and that happens everywhere. Javaris Johnson being the latest. It might not be finished based off what I've been told off the whispers I've heard out of that program the last 3 days.
Yeah. Wow. I don't know how much more you can take right now.
Well, there's still some contemplating whether they're going to leave. And I'll say this, I wrote this too, but it's a point now where, Brian Harsin he needs to sit down, look in the mirror. I know it's a cliche. Look in the mirror and go, what am I doing wrong? Why are people leaving? Why are these coaches not agreeing with me? Why are these players wanting to go elsewhere? This isn't a situation where it's just, coaches come in, it's my way or the highway, and I know I'm right. Are you really right? Are you right all the time? No coach is. And with Brian Harsin, this is a thing with his personality and the way he's run a program that at Boise State, it was like this too those last couple of years. And I've talked to people that worked in that building too, and they're not surprised what's going on at Auburn right now. And I hate saying this, but like some people at Boise State were happy he left. they saw the program going down a wrong path. It was kind of falling apart there too. But listen, I hope it works out for Harsin and Auburn, because I want to see Auburn be successful. When Auburn's successful, everything's much better in that state, for the rivalry with Alabama and for the SEC. But Auburn's slipping now to a point where, with A&M rising, as everybody knows, and Georgia winning a national championship, and Alabama still in dynasty mode, and LSU's got, Brian Kelly. What does Auburn have right now? Like, what do you celebrate if you're Auburn outside the basketball team? And by the way, War Eagle Bruce Pearl. Hey, listen, guys, I will be at the Auburn Arkansas game wearing an Auburn basketball shirt.
Wow.
I love Bruce Pearl. He is a friend of mine, still texts me, and he's nice to me. And if someone's nice to me and they're good to me, and I don't cover your program anymore, I can be a fan. I'm a huge fan of Auburn basketball right now. So War Eagle to them, and I will be there with my wife wearing Auburn gear. And I'm an Arkansas alum.
Wow.
And I'm going to be wearing my Auburn gear in Bud Walton Arena. So anyway, I want to see Auburn football do well right now. I've got friends there, as I said. And everything I keep hearing, everybody, here's the thing. Auburn fans, listen, you think I'm just really negative about your program. You've always said that. You've said that for years about me. I loved living in Auburn. I love the community there. It's where my family started. And it pains me to see what's happening to the Auburn football program right now under Brian Harsin. Harsin can get it turned around, but he needs to look at himself and figure out what he's doing wrong, as much as he needs to look outward and say everybody else is just wrong around me, because that's not the issue. There's two sides to this. Both sides are a little bit wrong, but listen, the other thing is, it's as clear as this, and I've said this repeatedly with you guys. The recruiting there is terrible. They've got to fix that. It is terrible. Yeah, top 20 in the nation right now. You know what their overall recruiting class right now, including the transfer portal, ranks as? It ranks 10th in the SEC. And that's not really including all the pieces they've had leave in the transfer portal. This is including portal pickups they've had and the recruiting class they've signed. They've got to get that turnaround recruiting, because recruiting combined, at least according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, these last two recruiting classes, which have come under Brian Harsin's watch, they're the worst combined recruiting classes for Auburn since 2008, 2009.
Wow.
You do that for a third straight year, I don't see how you keep that coach around, and I don't see how you could think that you will be contending in the SEC West for the next 4 to 5 years.
Well, look, there's no expectations, Brandon, and we've seen coaches in year 2 win national championships. Let's switch gears to USC and what Lincoln Riley's doing. He got Caleb Williams. He got his quarterback. He got other guys like Mario Williams to come in from Oklahoma, Travis Dye from Oregon. The recruiting class wasn't great, but there is a lot of excitement. I mean, what is your expectation for this USC program from year 1 to year 2 under Lincoln Riley?
They're going to be a lot of fun to watch. They're going to score points. The big issue, though, for me is that offensive line. They haven't picked up anything really good in the transfer portal, or at least in recruiting that will help them immediately. And that offensive line has struggled for them the last 3 years. It improved a little bit last season in run blocking, but that's going to be an issue for them this upcoming year. The good thing is they got Travis Dye, as you said. That helps them, but it's also going to help them in the passing game. But that offensive line's not going to be at a championship-type level. But Lincoln Riley will be able to scheme around that, because let's be honest, the OU offensive line this past season wasn't great. It was just good. If he can get that, that USC offensive line just to play good to maybe a little bit above average, they could win the Pac-12 South this year. Because I think USC, their defensive line, you look at the numbers, the analytics from last season, and talking to people, they didn't do well, but it didn't do as well as it should have. They've got some really great talent up front in that defensive front. And a lot of those guys that are going to be stars and superstars for them are younger, highly recruited players. And last year when that coaching change happened, I've been told that a lot of those guys kind of just start taking it easy. They didn't break through the way they should have. And some of the coaches, honestly, just weren't coaching them up as the ways they should have, because they knew they were probably on their way out too. So I expect USC's defensive front next season to be one where we're going, where's this been the last couple of years? That defensive front's going to be a lot better next season, and that's going to help them, I think, maybe more so than I know everybody's focusing on Caleb Williams, I should say, and that offense, but that defensive front could be really, really good for them next season, and that might actually be enough to help them offset what we're going to see from that offensive line, because I'm not so certain they're going to be great or even above average as a rushing offense, and they're going to have to do a lot of things to help protect that, and they're going to throw the ball a lot, I think, and that defensive front could really help them out, and I look forward to watching them this year. I think they're Pac-12 South contenders against Utah, but, until there was someone as physical as Utah in that division, I mean, Utah is the most physical team on the West Coast. We saw that last season. I think the second most physical team on the West Coast last year was Fresno State, if you watched them.
Yeah.
Which kind of tells you the state of football out there. But I like USC going into next year in Utah. That's going to be a great fight for the division. But let's hold off on the playoff talk for USC. They got to fix that offensive line first.
Before you go, Brandon, speaking of playoff talk, Cincinnati didn't get a huge bump in recruiting from being in the playoffs or joining the Big 12. When does moving to the Big 12 start to resonate for UCF, which I think was in the 60s, Cincinnati in the 60s, Houston in the 70s, BYU in the 80s in recruiting? At some point, right, they've got to get a Big 12 bump that they're moving up. Is that this next cycle, the cycle after that? When do you think it starts happening?
I think it doesn't start happening for most of those schools until they're actually in the Big 12 and they start playing football and they have something to sell to the players of here's what our system actually looks like in the Big 12. So I think a lot of players are sitting there going, we're not so certain that what you're selling us is actually going to prove true, and which is surprising with Cincinnati because obviously they're in the playoff this year. But I think for those schools, it's going to be wait until they get in the Big 12 and they can start recruiting those type of players they need because, listen, they're going to have to get bigger up front. All those schools do to be able to compete in the Big 12. And, if I was I'm not coach, but that's what they need to be focused on. They need to be getting the Big 12 type talent in the trenches because the skill players they'll be able to compete with the skill players they have at a UCF or BYU or Cincinnati, but it's all going to come up front. And you guys saw that when Alabama faced Cincy. It doesn't match up against the big boys. So we'll see when they join the Big 12. I will say this, look in the transfer portal for some of these schools, especially UCF. They did a pretty good job in the transfer portal. Our transfer portal rankings, I think UCF was doing very, very well. They're beating pretty much everybody in the state of Florida out except for Florida State. And Florida State has quietly been kind of killing it in the transfer portal themselves.
Yeah, but eventually all of Gus's recruits at Auburn will be gone.
Yeah. He's kind of running out of that pipeline, isn't he?
Yeah. All right, Brandon Marcello is on Twitter at @BMarcello. You can see him at 24/7 Sports. Go subscribe to everything he does, including his YouTube channel, and watch all of that. Brandon, it is always fun, man. We greatly appreciate the time.
All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
All right, buddy. Take care. Brandon with us on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline. Really good stuff, especially his comments on Auburn there, I thought.